Welcome to the video on Macbeth and the preparation for the Macbeth extract to whole assessment that's coming up. So this video will help you to understand how and why the question exists and how to approach an extract to whole question ready for your assessment. So what do we mean by extract to whole? Well, these questions ask you to talk about and think about the play as a whole, okay, as the whole text that we've taught you over this term, which means thinking about the big picture. So things like the order the events happen in, the changes that happen to characters across the play, how those develop, and how those themes are presented in different ways across the whole text. Also, how the plot is driven forwards by this chain of events. So, for example, if Banquo hadn't been with Macbeth when he met the witches, he probably wouldn't be killed by Macbeth towards the middle of the play. So it's because of that first event that the simultaneous events occur. So thinking about the connections between those events. Also, perhaps thinking about the overall message of the author of a text. So why the writer is showing you part of this at the beginning and then later on develops it further towards the end. What is their perhaps overall message and meaning through the whole text structure? So it's really important for us not to just think of kind of parts of Macbeth, but think about it as a whole and how it's developed as well. Now, the other part of the question asks you very carefully to look at an extract from the text. Now, when we're looking at extracts, it's always really important that we pick out key pieces of information that we can discuss. It's the most important that you pick out things that you really understand and that will give you the best opportunity to show off your skills and show off your understanding of the language choices that have been used. So the reason they're asking you to look at an extract is they want you to show that you can do a close reading of a section of the text. This means that you are going to pick out language choices, so words, techniques or phrases that show how the character or theme is presented specifically in this moment of the text. So you're going to be picking out either close words, adjectives, nouns, verbs that the writer has chosen to use and the connotations of those, or you're going to be doing technique analysis, so perhaps the use of simile or the use of rhyme or the use of a sort of punctuation, exclamation marks at this point in the text, or perhaps even stage directions. You're also going to talk about what the writer has done at this precise moment in the play. So why has Shakespeare chosen to present the character or theme at this moment in time in this way? And therefore, what might he have intended the audience to either think or want or understand or question or learn at this point in the play, and why are they doing that? So it's using things like, are they foreshadowing? Is it building tension? Is it kind of giving clarification to the audience? Is it making them suddenly realise their own faults? What is it that they're doing right at that moment in this precise extract? So let's have a look at how to approach a question. So this is one that I've made myself, but you will have a very similar looking question in your assessment. So this is the general layout. At the top of the page, it will tell you where the extract has come from. Now, the reason I want you to look at that first and why that's labelled number 1 is it's really, really important to understand where the extract has come from in the whole of the text. So you'll see here it says in this extract from Act 5, Scene 5 of Macbeth, Macbeth is told that Lady Macbeth is dead, and then he reflects on the meaning of life and death. So the bit that I would highlight with my highlighter, because you're all going to have one of those in the assessment, is Act 5, Scene 5. Now, obviously, we all remember that tragedies are in 5 acts. So if this is from Act 5, Scene 5, the middle of Act 5, this is towards the end of the play. So we know now that this extract is from the end of the play. That's really, really important. So you need to work out whether it's from the beginning, the middle, or the end. Highlight Act 5, Scene 5, and it will help you to remember that it comes from the end of the play, which means that when we talk about the rest of the play, we're going to need to talk about the middle and the beginning. So, second thing to notice, even before I've read the extract itself, is I need to know what the question itself is asking me to focus on. So, if you see down at number 2 here, it says, what is the question asking you about? Is it a character question or is it a theme question? It will always be character or theme or a combination of the two. So the question is down the bottom underneath the extract, and this one says, starting with the extract, answer the following question. How is death presented by Shakespeare in the play Macbeth? Now, this is quite a vague question. Yours won't be quite as open as this, but I wrote this one myself. So the focus of the question here is a theme question, and it's the theme of death and how death is presented by Shakespeare in the play. So I would highlight, again with my highlighter, the word death to make sure that everything I talk about in my essay is related to the theme of death and how death is presented by Shakespeare. The third thing, and notice I'm still not reading the extract, is that I need to get out of my head all of those quotes that I've walked into the examination or the assessment knowing, out of my head and onto paper so that I don't forget them. So now that I know the focus of the question is death, and I know that the extract is from the end, I need to get out of my head and onto my planning sheet, so next to the extract somewhere, at least 2 quotes from the beginning and the middle of the play on death. So what I would do now is get those out of my head, think, well, where was there an instance of death in the beginning of the play? Well, right at the beginning, we had the captain who was nearly dying, and he told about how Macbeth bravely killed people on the battlefield for Duncan. Okay, we can talk about that. What about later on? Well, obviously the killing of Duncan happens after that. So you could talk about how Macbeth feels guilt after having killed Duncan. So I would write down any quotes that I can remember about these plot points. If you find at that point that you've forgotten, you're like, I've forgotten the exact quote. Oh, that's really unfortunate, but I remember that he talks about needing to get the blood off his hands after he's killed Duncan. I can't remember the exact quote. Just write blood, needing to wash blood off hands. Okay, and you can still talk about that event even if you can't remember the exact wording, as long as you explain it really, really clearly. Okay, so this is all of your first 5 minutes of planning, and you need to take these 1, 2, 3 steps here to make sure that you get everything out of your mind ready before you look at the actual extract. So, as an example, this is what your planning should look like, and you should be able to do this in the first sort of 4 to 5 minutes. So you can see on the right hand side I've highlighted Act 5, Scene 5 of Macbeth, so I know that it comes from the end. I've also highlighted the word death because that's the focus of the question. Then I've gone beginning, middle and end. In my notes I would scribble this down just in rough form. So for the beginning, I've said death is rewarded when killing in battle. Macbeth is praised for violently killing enemies of Duncan. And then I've got the quote, he unseamed him from the nave to the chops, which shows that he's rewarded for killing and bravery and being manly. In the middle, though, Macbeth feels guilt after killing Duncan, showing that he has still some humanity and remorse left. Regicide, which is the word, obviously, for killing the king, is wrong, and Macbeth realises how bad he has been. And then I've got the quote, but if you can't remember the quote, you can just discuss the plot point. Will all great Neptune's oceans wash this blood clean from my hands? Then the end, I've got Macbeth is rightfully killed by Macduff in battle, and the country is saved once more. Vengeful death for the killing of his children means that Macduff becomes the hero. And this is Macbeth's last line, which is, "Lay on Macduff, and damned be him that first cries, hold, enough." So we have obviously the death of Macbeth as the protagonist, but shows that death has kind of brought everything full circle and back to the beginning. So hopefully you can do that sort of planning in the first 5 minutes, which then gives you the rest of your time to work on the extract. So now we move on to the extract. Now that you've got everything out of your head that you need to, and you've planned what you're going to do for the whole text, you need to look really closely at the extract to make sure that you can pick out the best information to give you the best opportunity to show your analytical skills. So you read through the extract with your highlighter, and I would recommend that you underline or highlight all of the relevant sections of text that match the focus of the question. So as you're going through, you're going to be looking for, in this case, anything that's related to death. Once you've done that, I would then go through your highlighted quotations and either circle the single word choices that you're going to choose to talk about the connotations of, or label those techniques as a method. So is it a use of a simile? Is it repetition? Is it a metaphor? Or something else? And then finally, you then number 1, 2, 3, your 3 favourite quotes. It's really, really essential that you pick the ones that are best suited to you, that you can talk about the most, that you have the most to say about. That will make you feel more empowered and confident. Okay, now that you've gathered all of your information, you've done most of the work. You are almost complete with your planning time now. So the only thing you have to do now is work out the order in which you're going to kind of put these ideas into your writing, so your paragraph structures. We recommend that you follow this particular structure. So your first paragraph is on the extract, so your favourite quote that you've picked up from the extract. Your second paragraph will be on the whole text. So in this case, because it comes from the end, it would be the quote that you had for the beginning of the play. The third paragraph goes back to the extract. Your fourth paragraph would go to your next quote that you've taken from the whole play, so in this case the middle of the play, and then you go back to the extract for your third quote for paragraph 5. Now, there's a reason for this. We alternate between the extract and the rest of the play to make sure that we've answered all of the question. Remember, the question is asking you about how Shakespeare presents that theme or character in the extract, but also in the play as a whole. So to ensure that we do both, we make sure that we alternate between the extract and the whole, and the extract and the whole, so that if you run out of time, okay, you have definitely done both parts of the question. You can't be penalised for missing perhaps some of it. Also, it helps ground you and show that you understand the order of events. So you can use sentence starters like, however, later on in the play, blah, 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 blah. Or earlier on in the play, before the extract, Macbeth is presented as blah, 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 blah. And this shows that you understand that kind of whole text structure, the synchronicity of events and what takes place. So it will make you sound more confident in your writing. So that would leave you with the actual writing of your paragraphs. We do highly recommend that you write swan style paragraphs, but I've just put on here a reminder of the things that you really need to be making sure that you have included in all of your paragraphs. So it's basically the things the examiners are looking for. So first of all, you need to start each paragraph with a statement answering the question. So, in other words, if it was this question, you make sure that you mention the focus of the question. So, in this case, death. So, it might start with something along the lines of, in the extract, death is presented as insignificant, or death is presented as being a heroic event, or death is presented as something that is necessary. Okay, so your statement will always, always, always at the start of each paragraph refer to the focus of the question. The second thing that you need to make sure that you always include in your paragraphs are either a quotation directly from the text, so Shakespeare's actual words that he uses in the play, or if you cannot remember a really specific quote, you can refer to a specific plot point that relates to the question, as long as you are really precise about when that happened and what happened. So, for example, if you wanted to talk about how Lady Macbeth said that she would have killed Duncan, but he looked too much like her father, and you can't remember the exact quote, you can say Lady Macbeth stands on stage talking to herself about how she would have killed the king had he not looked like her father. This shows that her character is blah, 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 blah. Okay, and that's specific enough, okay, to show that you have a deep understanding of the text without actually including the quotation. Obviously, ideally, if the quotation is there, then you can talk about the language used by Shakespeare, which means that you can go a bit more deep with your analysis, but remembering specific plot points will still help you. Don't freeze, don't panic because you can't remember a quote, because that won't help you. Thirdly, you need to explain the meaning and the effect of the quote or the event on the audience, so how it makes either the Renaissance audience feel or perhaps a modern audience as well, or even both. If you want to develop and extend, does it make the Renaissance audience feel one way and the modern audience feel a different, separate way? And make sure you explain that to add in perhaps some context from the period. And then finally, you need to try and think about using these lovely verbs. So what is Shakespeare trying to get the audience to think or want or learn or understand or question as a result of that particular moment in the play, or that character's reveal or that theme's reveal? What is he trying to get us or the Renaissance audience to think or feel or question or understand about death, about that big idea? Like I said, using swan structures will help you to make sure that you include all those steps, but we want you to do your best and to try your hardest, so kind of allowing yourself a little bit more freedom might help with that. Good luck.